Ladies and gentlemen, they've got a bit of a wake-up there, and a bit more than a wake-up, but a heart attack, we don't want that. We need domainers in the world. We need to keep you alive. My name is James Williams. I'm Director of Programs with a trade organisation, a neutral trade body called the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. So I'm joined today by 4 members. I'm going to do a very quick presentation. Once these 4 fine chaps have been seated, I'm going to give them a quick introduction now on what MEF is, who our members are, what we do, and we're going to talk about the world of business messaging, which is going to be very new to practically all of you in the room, other than a couple of people I know from the developer community originally who are familiar with some business messaging companies. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Simeon Coney, who is the Chief Strategy Officer of ENEA AdaptiveMobile. Simeon, come on down. You'll have time a little bit later to introduce yourself properly. We've got Mr. Tomikas from Estonia. He's the CEO of Messente. We have David Creasey-Benjamin, who is from Cisco. Cisco bought a big messaging company called imimobile, so that's now part of the Cisco empire. And we have Franck, Zaïre, who lives in London but from France, and he is CEO of a messaging and voice company called Annecto. So these are 4 of the 216 members of MEF. Now let me first get my clicker. Thank you very much, Munir. Appreciate that. So MEF has been around for about 22 years now. We are member-led, so we have 12 board directors and 10 of them are elected members. So members truly have the power. So we have 216 members, as I said, been around for 22 years, and the key thing is we are very, very much neutral and sit in the middle of all things mobile. Now, to start off with, the organisation was known as the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, and about 7 years ago rebranded to be a bit more encompassing, to turn it into Mobile Ecosystem Forum. So our members span a broad array. We've got a fine representation here of messaging companies as well, security company in the form of ENEA AdaptiveMobile, but we have payments companies, mobile operators such as BT, Telefonica, Ooredoo Group, Telin from Indonesia. So great penetration into India actually. We've got the Indian government to remember, the Telecom Sector Skills Council. We have very close links with the National Cybersecurity Centre, and indeed all 24 governmental departments here in the UK are part of our SMS sender ID registry, because we do run a registry, but for SMS sender IDs, I'm sure we're going to be touching on that in our following discussion with the folks here. And we are also neutral arbiters of what's called the 10-digit long code program in the US. So any business in the US that wants to send SMS text messages to their customers has to sign up and register. They are then verified to make sure they are who they say they are, and then they're able to send these SMS, and MEF is the neutral arbiter of that, sitting in the middle of all the mobile operators in the US and the messaging community. And we have registries as well in Spain and Ireland and moving to other countries. We're actually a very small organisation. There are only 4 full-time permanent employees, 15, 20 contractors doing 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week. IoT, and a very active area is the area of wholesale, because everything you guys are doing in the room, everything the folks here on stage are doing relies on infrastructure and connectivity at the end of the day to underpin everything. And the wholesale telecoms market has a huge role to play in that. Traditional telecoms, of course, you've still got SMS, you've got voice, as Franck, you in particular know, as well, plays still a very huge role in the world of connectivity and communications too. So that's MEF in a nutshell. These are just some of the brands around the world we have as members. We've got more on top of this. A new star you will see here in green. I'm aware they used to be fairly big in the domain world, I hear. as well in the past, but not so recently. We have banks as well, Barclays, Lloyds, HSBC, so a real mixture as well. So, and there are going to be others coming very, very soon as well. This is, there's some others needing to be added to this. You're looking for your brand in there somewhere. Don't worry, you are on the website, you're around. So that's MEF in a nutshell. Now, to start us off as well, I'm going to like to introduce you to David, who's going to come on down if you want, and going to present a little bit about the world of business messaging. So I'll just go and switch presentation if you'd like to introduce yourself whilst I do that.
No problem. Excellent. Okay, let's make sure I can work this thing. So, good morning, everybody. My name's David Creasey-Benjamin, affectionately known as DCB. And I have the best job title at Cisco, in my opinion, because I get to call myself a future messaging evangelist. Yeah, it's an American company, but they do love it. And it means that I get to come and speak to new people all the time. And I get to come and speak to them about business messaging and talk about what consumers actually want. What we're seeing in the marketplace, what some of these fine gentlemen are doing in terms of technology, what WebEx, as I now must call myself, are doing in terms of customer messaging. So, visual, no signal? Yes. Yay, there we go. All right, okay, I feel a bit better now because I know what's coming up behind me. So, when meeting a new audience, and when in doubt, start with a number. There you go. It's a fairly big number, 140 billion. That's the number of messages we send every single day. I have been keeping an eye on the audience. The previous panel were pretty good. Most of you kept your phones away, but there were definitely people looking at their messaging. And there's at least one in the middle there. There always is when I'm talking and say that bit. So follow the number with the quote. Empowered customers are quickly becoming entitled customers who expect consistent high-value experiences regardless of channel. So what does that mean? Well, we send 140 billion messages every single day. That's 28 for every adult on the planet. We all have our channel of choice. So most of you in this room will know what WhatsApp is. Most of you will probably have sent at least one WhatsApp message this morning. Some of you might be using Facebook Messenger. Others will be using iMessage. Still more of you might be using Viber. We have some Eastern European representation in the room, so more than likely some of you have sent Viber messages this morning. And the thing is, we have a huge amount of choice. We download messaging apps and we adopt the one that we like. I'll say these are the apps that stay on your phone. These are the apps that you look at 20, 30, 40 times a day. These are the ones that will not have a red bubble at the top. Take a look at your phone now. The vast majority of you, the biggest red bubble on your phone will be email. I normally play a competition with those on the stage, but I think these guys read their messages. Last time we were up, though, I made the guess that the highest number would be in the tens of thousands. I was sat next to a lovely gentleman called Nick who had 110,000 unread emails. I haven't emailed him since. But we don't look. Email we allow to queue. Messaging we look. There's a really famous stat from some friends of ours, another MEF member called Mobile Squared. 90% of SMS are read within 3 minutes. They've revised it down a bit after 10 years, which means about 55% of SMS are read within 3 minutes. But when you start looking at the OTT channels, so your WhatsApp, your iMessage, your Viber, it's 90% again. This is where you spend your time. And consumers increasingly want to talk to business on their terms, which means businesses need to be on the messaging channels their customers are already on. Now, go and look at your SMS inbox now. Ooh, back one. You probably all have at least one SMS from a business. Virtually all of you will have had a PIN over SMS as the bog standard. So when you're signing in online, your two-factor authentication, you'll have received a PIN which you copy out of there and you put into the website and on you go. But you'll also get delivery notifications. If you're in the wrong circumstances, you'll get an overdraft message from your bank, like me, every once in a while. But you will get messages and notifications from the businesses that you work with. But they do tend to be one way. And what we've seen a rise in, and I think Ugo will talk a little bit about this later, is how do you know who's sending you that SMS? We have all been warned to not click on links in SMS messages. We've looked at not giving away your username and credentials. Smishing is becoming more of a problem in our industry, in messaging, particularly with SMS. There is some terrific work that MEF has done in terms of the sender registry. So your banks will have signed that sender registry so that the mobile networks protect the sender ID that they send to you. So that alpha tag you can trust. But as soon as you want to have a conversation, as soon as you want two-way messaging, then it has to be a telephone number, whether it's a short code or a long code. So something that looks like a full mobile number versus the 5 digits you will use to vote for X Factor. That's the difference, short code and long code. But you have to have one of those to be able to do a reply. So actually, how does your consumer know that it's you getting in touch? Well, the first step of evolution is this. There's no number involved there. That's one of the richer channels. It comes from your brand, comes from your logo, comes with your slogan across the top. But it's the exact same content. It's the same content that you'd receive over SMS, but you'll get it on your phone from a trusted sender ID. And just like your industry introduced the green padlock, so we all knew who we could shop with online, our industry is introducing the tick. The verification means something. It means either Google or Apple or indeed Meta or your mobile operator has said, this is the person sending those messages. And you can trust that this message comes from that person. And from a business point of view, that's the same content. Uku gave me a stat earlier, which I'm going to steal quite happily. Sending the same SMS content over Viber, which is an incredibly popular OTT channel, sending the exact same marketing content from the moment as you do in an SMS, send it over Viber with a verified sender and you'll get 3 times the amount of engagement. End of story. We see the same thing in the UK. Now that's RCS, which none of you will have heard of, unless you're on an Android device and you happen to very closely look at your messaging apps. But it is what will replace SMS on your Android device. And it will happen without you knowing. But it's a secure channel that an enterprise can take advantage of. But really, that's just the start. And we are seeing evolution in terms of what messaging is used for. Because what does an enterprise want to do? An enterprise wants to be in communication with their customer. They want to have a conversation. And if you get to that, that's WhatsApp. As I said, you all use WhatsApp. You're all familiar with how it works. And it's where you talk to your friends and family. So how valuable is it to be an enterprise that can be in that space? Your end user invites you into the same place they talk to their friends and family. And what they're doing is they're having a one-to-one personal conversation with you. You as a business. So you have to be respectful of that. You need to make sure that the content is personalized. You need to make sure that you are having the conversation they want to have. And if you're using a chatbot, which we invariably are, because they're getting better and better and better and better, you need to be honest with the customer. Customers are quite happy to talk to chatbots. They do so from Google. It's Google Business Message. It's Google's answer to messaging. Sorry, Microsoft, if you're in the audience, nobody bings anything. We all Google. So when you find an enterprise and you find that URL, you find the domain, Google have introduced a button that says, would you like to talk to us now? And you can immediately start a conversation with that business in a secure, encrypted channel. And you'll see that more and more. They're using it to push your results up the shopping bar. So if you've registered for Google Business Messages, your product appears further up that shopping bar. It's as simple as that. How have Apple done it? The majority of you in this audience will have an iPhone. Statistics tell me that. But that's Apple Messages for Business. It is a privacy-driven channel integrated fully into all of your iDevices, whether it's the watch, whether it's the iPad, whether it's the desktop, whatever you want. It's built in there, and because Apple control their ecosystem, it is very privacy-focused. You can't start a conversation with a customer as a business. They have to start one with you. Once you've done that, you have a private ID between you and that end user. No one else in the world can use it other than your enterprise. But you can see, you can have full end-to-end conversations. You can do payments, you can do authentication, you can share location, you can get into the calendar on the device, you can give a hyper-personalized experience to that customer. And you can see the benefits that you can kind of bring to marketing. Last one then, this is RCS. Same experience, this one's telling you a bit about the channel. RCS is a direct replacement for SMS on your Android. In terms of SMS marketing, we send billions of SMS marketing messages every day. So imagine if that customer clicks you can have an immediate conversation about the product or immediate conversation about the thing that you're sending. Another MEF member, Out There Media, ran a campaign with Disney on RCS. Now, they compared the results of that outbound campaign to their television advertising and compared it to online advertising, where the attention span of a user is probably a couple of seconds, or the audience of a TV channel, a couple of million for a really popular channel. An outbound RCS campaign meant the customer was having a conversation with them for at least 90 seconds. You can look to Viber, which is another channel which I've not put up there. They've introduced chatbots. Cosmopolitan got to 250,000 subscribers within a few days. The AI chatbot, Cookie, if I pronounce it correctly, the average interaction with that is 80 messages. When someone starts talking to it, they'll spend, minutes, even hours sometimes, talking to a chatbot because you're delivering a personalized conversation the same way your friends and family have. And it means that discovery is much, much easier. All of these rich channels are opening up the ways in which you can find them. If you've got WhatsApp on your phone, go to start a new conversation, there's a new line that says start a conversation with a business. As we're in the UK, you'll see every business registered in the UK that's opted into that directory right now. You can go and start a conversation with them immediately. Google have introduced it to search. Apple, it's the richest real estate in the world. If you want consumer eyeballs, you want them from an iDevice. If you've registered for Apple Messages for Business, you will get that, because from search, from location search, even if you attempt to call them, it will suggest that you message the business instead. So there is a huge amount of good that a business can get from having a personal conversation the same way they're having with their friends and family. So James has given me the eye, so that probably is my 10 minutes up before we have a proper conversation. So I'll just give you a chance. Those of you itching to get out and check your messages, you can do so now under the cover of me telling you to take a photo. So you can go and have a look. But if you scan that, you will get a go at Apple Messages for Business or Google Business Messages, just as an example.
David, I wasn't giving you that. I was actually going to WhatsApp to see, what businesses were in there. Because you know what? Shame on me, but I'm going to admit, I've never actually done that.
Go and have a
look. I'm going to be fired from MEF tomorrow by you members. But there we go.
There you go. But hopefully that's a good introduction to business messaging, and we're going to give you a bit more having conversations about it. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you for that, David. So I'll just switch. Yeah. Press and hold that. If you take... not the clicker, we don't need the clicker anymore, but these I will take and up. Right, so we're talking about the world of business messaging, but first of all, let's talk about the world of the people here. Simeon, would you like to introduce yourself, please? I was going to say checkered history. It's not checkered or potted history in the world of telecoms, but your history in the world of telecoms, what your company does and what you do.
Yeah, okay, thanks, James. So, I work for a company called ENEA, AdaptiveMobile. We provide security. We've been doing it about 20 years. So cast your mind back 20 years ago. Pretty much it was Symbian, Nokia devices, if you remember those. Apple was a just emerging twinkle in Steve Jobs' eye at that point. And we've been looking at the infrastructure. It's big equipment, lots and lots of government wireless licenses being spent. And we realized that really nobody was paying attention to what could be sent over this. Everyone was saying, is it a legitimate phone? Is it a legitimate network? But actually, what about securing the transactions? So ensuring the message was trusted, ensuring that the website you went to was legitimate. So we founded a business that is effectively a firewall. We sit there, and that 140 billion number, we sit across probably about a quarter of that. So we protect today about 2.2 billion people across the globe, ensuring that the messages they receive from their friends, their families, and from businesses are safe and trusted. So in addition to things like, does it have a green tick, what actually about the content of that? Is that a message that is trying to defraud them? Is it trying to take or steal or obtain information? Or is it just trying to distract them? Is it unwanted communication? So we're all about making sure that when your phone bings and buzzes and you pick it up, that it's actually something that you want there, not something that is damaging and harmful. And so, to give you an idea of context of, is this really needed? On average, I would say we're blocking about 20 million bad things a day. And the implication of just one bad thing getting through to an end user is potentially they've now lost their entire bank details, or somebody now has been able to take over their identity online. You know, there's now significant implications and repercussions as a result of this. So we work very closely with the community to make sure that that whole experience is really a safe and a trusted one.
Thank you. Uku.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Tomikas, and I am from Messente Communications. Messente is a business messaging company working with retail brands, helping them have those types of conversations that DCB showed on screen as well. We're very much focused on working with financial service providers, big logistics companies, you know, the DHLs, the DPDs of the world, providing them those services, but not just providing messaging services across multiple platforms, but also working quite a lot in helping protect their brand from the same type of fraud and scam that Simeon mentioned. So in our home market, for example, in the Baltics, working with the national police, working with the banking association, working with all of the main logistics providers to try to curb smishing and other forms of fraud. Because, and you know, you like numbers, I like numbers, one of the big stats around it is that SMS smishing has about 1 to 4% conversion rate on average in terms of how many people will actually lose money on it. And the global average, I think, what Nick mentioned a few months ago was $800 per one instance of scam. So if he's stopping 20 million messages going through per day, 1 till 4% conversion of that times $800 is the amount of damage we're talking about. So tens of millions up to hundreds of millions every single day in pure damage, right? So it's not just a question of how do we facilitate business as well as possible for all of the end retail brands, how do we associate, how do we help them work as well as possible across the multiple different entities they also have. You know, DHL doesn't work through just one brand, they have a multitude of brands they work through. So how do we not only help facilitate great communication for that, but how do we also protect those brands, help their name be as clear as possible to make sure that there's trust? Because from our perspective, we see people being a lot more cautious about where and when they click.
I'll keep it quick because I've had my time. I better talk about the company I work for because I now realise I didn't mention them once. So WebEx is probably a brand you're familiar with in terms of meeting apps. So being able to have video conferences, being able to do the kind of things that we've all had to do during the pandemic. But Cisco WebEx bought the company I worked for, which was imimobile. And I know you guys love an acronym, and we are a CPaaS provider, which means a communication platform as a service. So we enable all of those conversations. So we enable a business to be able to concentrate on the conversation they need to have with their customer wherever they want to have it. And we work with partners to ensure that those message routes are secure. We ensure that our customers have complete global reach so they can communicate with you wherever you happen to be, whether you're roaming, whether you're at home. And we can do it in real time so that customers can have a conversation on their terms. Completely asynchronously, they can set the pace. You can automate everything that you need to, link into your existing systems, be able to give the personalized answer at the right moment. And that's what WebEx purchased imimobile for and why we're now WebEx CPaaS Solutions.
I got one. Hi. My name is Franck Zaïre, so very nice to meet you. I work for a company called Annecto Telecom. We've been doing voice and SMS for about 20 years now. We are what we call a solution provider. So we help a large enterprise to terminate the traffic, and also we work with a mobile operator on the aggregation part. I hope I will be able to give you an insight about our day-to-day work. They mentioned fraud, which is a problem in our industry at the moment. But we are here to support large enterprise terminate the traffic, basically, in the best possible way.
Thank you, Frank. So this is the who. This is what who MEF is. This is who the members are. This is who the 4 people on stage are. But the question I would be asking myself, if I were you sitting there thinking, hey, I own 20,000 domains, I'm a registrar, I'm this, I'm that. Why are these guys here? Why is MEF here? And the reason we're here is very, very simply, there are a truckload of synergies between the world of business messaging and the world of domaining and domains. So yesterday was my first day being immersed in your industry. So other than a couple of MEF members I knew, so Andre, who owns Telecom, and IT.com, who's the title sponsor. Munir, I have never had the pleasure of meeting, but he's spoken on a panel of mine last December, and a couple of other people remotely. I've never met any of you from this world, and I didn't know anything really about this world until yesterday. And yesterday was so informative. We started off with Michael, the CEO of Central Nick, and then we've had so many panel discussions and speeches since then. Now, the reason for me being here and bringing people along is quite simply that if any of us here are looking to start up an organization or a business, the first thing we look at is our brand. And the first place we go to is, whether in Kenya.ke, thank you very much, I've got my label from here from Kenya, or wherever you are in the world, you would check to see what domains are available. That is your first port of call. So I have to admit, during the previous panel, I was there scrolling through everything Digital Candy have available, everything Seda have available, and it's phenomenal, the brand opportunities that are there. And of course, with IT.com, anything with an it at the end, you think of, it opens up millions of other opportunities. So there are a lot of opportunities, and as we heard yesterday in Kenya, you're going to be coming out with some new offerings in the next few months as well. So it's not static at all, the domain industry. And the crossover potential is vast, because if I'm coming to check for domain names as well, so many people out there, including probably so many of you, were not aware of the power of messaging channels. So David talked about SMS. So we have a MEF member called Mobile Squared, who are, I would say, the leading industry analysts when it comes to the world of business messaging. And it was the founder, Nick Lane, came up with this statistic more than 10 years ago, saying that 98% of SMS text messages successfully delivered are opened. And that's correct. And David then also mentioned it's about 55% now. It's actually not strictly incorrect, because people are still reading the vast majority of the content. It's just with a smartphone, when a message arrives, particularly if you've got the app on your computer linking your phone to the computer, the content flashes up, but technically, according to the mobile operator, your message has not been read. So this is why it's only 55%. But SMS is still
I will say Nick will be
powerful.
proud.
But yes, he would. Thank you. He would indeed. But I'm just showing this because it's a channel which started off officially. Here in the UK, the first SMS text message was sent on December the 3rd, 1992, by a young guy called Neil Papworth, who is still around in the industry, and from what was the Vodafone network saying, Merry Christmas. So that was December the 3rd, 1992, and there are now over 2 trillion SMS business-to-consumer transactions sent. But as you've been hearing, the world of business messaging is about far more than SMS. So if you want to be that one-stop shop for startups, and this is ultimately what we're here to talk about, it's not just about the bad and the fraud and the protection, it's about the growth opportunities, then there is so much synergy you can do, and I can but advise you to talk to these chaps on stage to get partnerships with the likes of Annecto and Cisco and Messente, and of course to consider then the security aspects with ENEA AdaptiveMobile, of course, too. But get a partnership with those guys. They'll do the heavy lifting. You can get a rev share, and off you go. So shall I just drop the mic and we run off stage and you start talking to these people?
Go now.
Yeah, and job done. But that's why we're here. So let's talk about the industry. Simeon, let's start with yourself. So I mentioned SMS in 1992. MMS came along. There have been so many other channels that have come along, but why is SMS, even with all the whiz-bangs, the color, the world of digital, why is SMS still capturing the imagination of people around the world or businesses around the world? What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, quite simply, it works. You find me a communication channel out of everything we've experienced over the last 30 years that just works to every single person on the planet who owns a device. I mean, we know that PC penetration it's improving, but there's far more phones out there. You don't need a fancy data connection, you don't need 4G, you don't need 5G signal, you don't need a data plan. If you've got a phone, you've got a number, and a message will get there. In fact, it's almost probably the most firm ID that many people possess. You know, it's not necessarily a physical address or a unique...
Okay.
I think we've lost it.
Oh,
Just
yours blew out.
Wow, okay.
It was a good speech, but I'm not sure it...
Earth-shattering. Mic drop.
Literally has blown.
It really has, yeah. But yeah, so it's pervasive, it works. And so if you're any form of business, it is brilliant, because if you know a subscriber's number, if you know your customer's number, you can reach out. You don't have to wait for them to open up something and type your domain in a website or start and open up an app. You can reach out to them. And the fact that you can reach out to them with then something that does something is important, because yeah, it is just 160 characters of text, but you can put your brand, you can put your URL in there. And as we keep hearing, if people receive a message, they do click it, they do open it, they do action it. So it's such a powerful way of starting that conversation to get someone to do something. So it's like we've all been saying, look at your phone, look at the messages. You know, it's delivery notifications. You click on it, where's my package? It's appointment reminders. What time is it? Add it to my calendar. It's contact me. Here's a phone number to call. You know, it's all of these things that create an immediate interaction with the brand that is what we want as consumers and what the brand wants as a business. So in summary, SMS, it just works. You know, all of the other apps that we saw from DCB, they have a better experience, but they have a less adopted customer base.
No, I think it's absolutely fair to say that is SMS's strength. It's entirely ubiquitous. But I will add, it's probably the last ubiquitous channel.
Yeah.
First and last.
Yeah. Let's talk about MMS, picture messaging. Because many of us will remember years ago, MMS picture messaging coming along. We were all told SMS days are over. SMS is gone. Long live the king. Thank you very much. MMS, here it is. So what happened to MMS?
If someone could answer that question for me, it would be lovely. But as is per usual, I think with a lot of innovations in the telecom scene, as we've seen so far, and I guess one of the reasons why SMS is still around for so far is somehow telcos quite often find a way, in part of my French, to cock it up. The same way RCS hasn't taken off in the past 10 years, even though knowing how much potential it has and how it's given actually leeway to all of the other chat apps to come into that space and grow so rapidly, because RCS was there far before WhatsApp. They could have gone and taken that market before it was ever capped by the others, but they didn't, because they didn't capitalize on it. I think it's quite similar to MMS as well. I think that it's one of those places where it really comes down to whether you seek and actually capitalize on the opportunity and create the infrastructure for that, or you don't. You know, take the domain space. Like a very practical example we see, for example, you know, I always talk from a fraud perspective, but this is less even from a fraud perspective, but more from like a brand perspective. We have brands that have long names, right? A long domain name. You know, not everyone's DHL. Yeah, mobile ecosystem forum. It's quite a long name. Very practical aspect. Most people want to send a URL. They don't want to put that entire web URL in that text message, because that makes the text message long and hence very expensive. Because as soon as you go over 160 characters, it's 2 messages. You're sending out a 30,000 message campaign, all of a sudden it's a 60,000 message campaign. Double the costs, right? So what they do is they start using and finding ways to create better URLs for themselves. Quite often what they'll do is they'll use bit.ly or tiny URL, just give me a quick shortened one. But the unfortunate thing is those are also most often used for scam and also most often filtered out of everything. So what they need is shortened branded URLs. And now this is one of the places where we quite often fall short is, okay, so how do I advise a brand on what's the best thing for them? I know what's the best from a messaging perspective, but I don't know what's the best thing from a domain perspective. So what do I need to advise them on? What's the type of best shortened one to go for? What's the best, TLD to go for, whatever. It's a world that we know less about. And it's, again, understanding those market opportunities and finding those places so you don't have another place of, MMS and it dying out and no one really knowing what it is anymore to a very large extent.
Franck, could you just explain why not? I was going to shout, just shouted, but I could. But Franck, can you explain to the audience here, because this is being recorded as well, for its education, the world of business messaging and stakeholders, because it's very, very easy to assume that if you're sitting here, okay, I get my mobile phone from BT, EE or Vodafone, I get my internet from Vodafone or BT, EE, so if I'm a small business and I want to start doing messaging, I can just rock up very easily to BT, EE or Vodafone or whatever, but that isn't the case, is it? So we've got companies such as yourselves and your colleagues sitting next to you who've been doing this business for upwards up to 20 years now. So why is it that, if you can just explain the stakeholders in the business and why you've built such a strong position and the mobile operators haven't necessarily?
I mean, each customer have a very specific requirement. Some of them they want their brand to be represented, so they will require a termination with the sender will represent the brand. Some of companies don't have the same requirements. They would just want the message to be delivered. So in our work is actually to provide them the most cost-effective and best solution for their problems. Typically, you have different type of messaging. You have something like typical campaign. So your Domino Pizza offer this evening. This is what we call marketing traffic. Another type will be OTP 2FA, which is another group of messages. And depending on what our customer want to send, they will want to use different type of channel. For instance, when is the last time you actually type an OTP code into the application? In most of the cases, the application go and pick it up automatically from your inbox, so you don't really have to, you don't necessarily see the message. So in this specific instance, the actual brand is not that important for the company. They just want the message to be delivered as quickly as possible, particularly within 10 seconds. Otherwise, the user will press send again. Whereas when you are facing a marketing campaign, for instance, the message can be delivered within a couple of hours without really impacting the goal. So we provide the best possible channel to our customers. And so as Uku mentioned it, domain is quite key because of the length of the message. So text messages are typically under 60 characters, but what we have to keep in mind is, depending on the language, it can be reduced to 70 characters, depending on the encoding. So if you have a URL which is too long, then you will quickly shift to more expensive, to doubling the number of messages you have to send. So 100,000 message will become 200,000. What we've seen as well, the price of messages actually increased. So we have to be very careful about sending as little message as possible. Otherwise, your bill, as you know, can be very, very significant.
But don't scare people, Franck, because SMS is very good. So I think what Franck is getting at and what Franck is showing, very, very much so, is that companies like Annecto, Cisco, and Messente, they're very, very nimble, very, very agile. They've got to deal with often customized situations which come from the individual requirements of enterprises. And simply put, mobile network operators are not tooled up to do that. What they are very, very good at is giving all of us in this room the ability to connect with each other, connect with businesses, loved ones, wherever we are on the planet, roaming around, sending messages, surfing the web, etc. That is what they do. But in many ways, they are missing a trick because they have supremely powerful brand names. We had your presentation all about Kenya yesterday, and if you are looking to set up in Africa, I remember 10 years ago, everyone was saying, go to South Africa, but now, if a company is wanting to move into Africa, certainly the sub-Saharan part, southern part, you go to Kenya. You set up in Kenya. That is the place to set up in. So mobile operators like MTN have such powerful brand names all over Africa, and they are there to be leveraged. So it's partnerships. Only by partnering with the likes of the guys on the stage here can the mobile network operators reach the enterprises. But you guys out here, you've got access to so many people who are thinking about starting a business, who are starting a business, that you can be literally that catalyst and that jump-off point to be the one-stop shop, we think, for starting off those businesses. So Simeon, just talking about the industry as a whole and the structure as a whole, what would you say to anyone here in the audience who's going, okay, that sounds great, domains, how do we actually make this a reality by tying up with a messaging company, making sure all our transactions are secure? How would they practically go about doing that?
Thanks, James. So the first thing then is, based upon sort of the nature of your business, understanding the best practices of engaging in your customer. At the end of the day, your business is, whatever it is, it's using the messaging is the enabler for that. So you really need to understand what are the rules or what are the best practices to play in that domain. So you mentioned earlier things like the 10-digit long code practice. So if your business is in North America, you really need to adhere to those guidelines or the short code practices, and that tells you it's a whole set of common sense good advice. How frequently do you contact your customer? How do you identify who you are? Particularly for yourselves, when you're using URLs in a message, ensure that you're consistent in that. Try not to use URL shorteners, as we heard, because anyone can use a URL shortener, and therefore everything looks the same. So it's actually a way of showing the value of a domain, but also, particularly as we've heard, getting the right domain, the punchy domain, will improve people's perspective of your brand. It can become part of that identification in there. So a whole set of really good guidelines on how to do it. And by adopting these techniques, it means that the whole ecosystem that's now responsible for these messages, because frankly, there's quite a lot of businesses that will be involved in taking it from the sending point to it appearing on a handset. We can ensure it passes all of the security checks so it arrives on time, in a timely manner, and that the user trusts it to open it and action it, which is what you want there.
Thank you. Uku, got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective as well, it's a question of trust all around. The more trust that is created, the better it is for the ecosystem as well, especially from a brand perspective. We've seen from logistics companies, for example, the degradation of trust getting to the point where people don't click on the first delivery notification that they get. And so the business has to send a repeat message. Every time they have to send a repeat message, it's additional cost. Every time they have to send a repeat message, the package is in the locker for longer. Could they fix that by having a more homogeneous view on how they deliver messages, how they present their brand, not just from the perspective of making message content the same, but from a URL perspective as well. From us, we see that as one of the key points. Whenever we're looking at, we did an audit of all of the content that the logistics company sends. And one of the key things we saw was that there was way too much variance in the types of URLs they sent. Way too much variance, right? So one of the first things we said is homogenize it. Make it so that your brand is associated with a very specific form of engagement you're looking to get, instead of using whatever seems best to the marketing team because it makes financial sense, right? Because it's cheaper that way if I use a Bitly. But the most important thing is to make sure that that brand identity is as strong as possible, and that really starts, as you mentioned as well, from when that brand is actually taken into play when they actually purchase a domain. Actually start from that perspective as well. And that's why the question is, okay, so why are we talking here about working together with domain providers? It's the question of how do we take from that inception of that business and help them grow to a bigger stage? And of course, then there's the question of the financial incentive. Why would anybody do that, right? It's the question of business messaging also drives a fair bit of money. You know, let's be perfectly honest about it. Average invoices for the enterprises that we serve in the thousands, tens of thousands, up to hundreds of thousands every single month on business messaging. And if you land a client like that, and through our partnership program, for example, there's a 25% revenue share. So when we're talking about bringing in a business that makes 10K a month in terms of revenue, the partner that brings it in gets 2.5 every month for a year. So that's kind of the incentive that comes from there. And it's so odd because the amount of business messages that is sent is very rapidly growing from the perspective of the business as well. Because as soon as you see success with that channel, the ramp up from usage is immense. You know, you send out a campaign of 1,000, you see, oh my God, it actually works. It has like a 49% click-through rate. Great. I'll up the next campaign to 10,000, to 100,000, to 200,000, to 500,000. And now those same invoices keep ramping up, and hence the revenue keeps on growing up from there as well. So there's definitely a lot of incentive to help business messaging companies help the brands they're working with as well, because it makes sense from both the partnership perspective as well as a brand protection and future business perspective.
Okay, thank you. David, over to you to add any colour to that. Because we're going to have to wrap up soon.
Oh.
Shocking proposition, I know.
Go quickly and you come to me. Okay. I mean, the thing that I would like to add, businesses can see messaging as a sunk cost. Business messaging is not expensive. You know, depending on what channel you use, you are looking at pennies. But the value that it drives by sending a message for a couple of cents, or even a partial cent, is massive. Logistics firms, we've mentioned a few times. If you're not in, that's $30 to $40 a time they've got to re-deliver. Sending you a reminder is proven to make sure that you're going to be in. It will up the first time delivery rate. So you can send hundreds of messages for the cost of one missed delivery. Move to health services, consultants, £150 for a missed appointment, minimum, for the want of a couple of cents. And that's why when you do campaigns like that and people start to see the return on value, those campaigns will increase and increase. And why we can 20 messages back and forth. Make sure you get to the bottom of a service question. Make sure you convert that lead to a sale. The value of that conversation is tenfold, easily. Messaging is not expensive. Despite the fact the prices are going up, you're absolutely right. But it's not expensive.
Thank you. Franck, I'm going to leave the closing remark to you just before I close. But what about people here who are domain brokers who've got perhaps a database at the moment of clients who perhaps send emails out saying this is our latest list? What would you say to them right now? What should they be doing in order to drive engagement with their own clients for domain broking, etc., etc.?
I mean, messaging is a very, very good channel to do this. What we call conversion rate. So compared to email, or you get much, much better results. So we're talking about 90% conversion rate, so people will actually be engaging with the message they receive. And it's all about, as you mentioned in the previous panel, it's all about education. Very few people know about messaging as a marketing channel, as an engagement channel. And so, quick example, so I have another business, family business, and we try to 10 to 12 length domain into like 5 or 6, and I was very, very proud. The problem is when people were receiving the message, it wasn't very appealing. So I think it's good to educate people about what they can do to better their online presence with a better domain, because people don't know there are actually alternatives. There are also domain available. People think about .com, but as you guys mentioned, there was a lot of other things you can do. And also just please promote messaging, because your customer will be happy, and That's what I wanted
Yeah,
to say.
that's key. And just to round this off, business messaging is the best kept secret out there. The problem is all of us have become so comfortable with text messaging, whether it's SMS or now chat apps, whatever it might be, WhatsApp and others, that we've become so comfortable, we don't actually think from a personal point of view that actually ourselves in our own businesses, we can actually use this to great effect. And it's that comfort factor which really hits home. So in your own businesses, whether it's domain broking, whatever you're doing, as long as you've got the phone number of your client, potential client, as long as they've given express permission, yeah, no problem, send us stuff. So they've opted in. That's the key thing from a legal point of view. You've got that opt-in there, then use it. As long as you don't over-egg it and spam someone, use SMS, use WhatsApp business messaging, whatever it is, to pump up your domain sales, if you're a registrar, whatever you're doing, just use what we've got. You've got some great companies lined up right here who can help you. We have 100 plus more. We have all the leading players in the world in the business messaging sector are present with a global reach. And use this. And this is the first time I think these two industries have come together. I look forward to be able to reinforcing the message, bringing it to a Middle East, North Africa audience, thanks to Munir, who is the founder and curator of Domain Days, and I will be over there on November the 1st and 2nd in Dubai, as I'm sure a good number of you in the room will be, so I look forward to that, and thank you for the invitation, Munir, for that. And just a final thank you to Helmut, who put this whole event together, and Andre, who is the title sponsor with IT.com. So thanks to all of you, and as I said, this is the first time for all of us in this industry, and we've got the crossover, so let's really build that bridge. Thank you very much, all of you. Thanks.